The bar was loud in the way only late-night places can be, music thumping through the walls, glasses clinking, laughter spilling from every corner. Neon lights flickered above rows of bottles, and the air smelled like alcohol and old wood. It was just another crowded night, the kind where no one paid attention to anyone else. Steven Seagal sat alone near the end of the bar. He didn't look like someone people would notice. Dressed in dark clothes, calm and quiet, he nursed his drink without saying much. No entourage, no spotlight. Just a man keeping to himself, eyes relaxed, posture steady. To most people, he looked like an older guy trying to enjoy a peaceful moment. A few seats away, a loud, drunk man had been watching him. At first, it was just glances, then smirks, then whispers to his friends. The drunk guy leaned back, laughed too loudly, and finally said, "Hey buddy, you look like you fell asleep in the wrong bar." Steven didn't respond. He didn't even look up. That only encouraged him. The man stood, wobbling slightly, and stepped closer. "What's wrong?" he mocked. "Cat got your tongue?" His friends laughed behind him, already enjoying the show they thought was about to start. Steven calmly took another sip of his drink. The drunk man shook his head. "Figures," he said louder now. "These places are full of quiet guys who think they're tough." A few people nearby started paying attention. Some smiled, expecting drama. Others felt uneasy but stayed silent. The bartender glanced over, sensing trouble, but didn't intervene yet. Steven finally turned his head slowly. Not angry, not afraid, just aware. "I don't want any problems," he said evenly. The drunk man laughed hard. "Problems?" he sneered. "You look like the problem is you." The laughter grew louder. Phones subtly came out of pockets. Someone whispered, "This could get ugly." Steven remained seated, shoulders relaxed, voice calm. "Let's just enjoy our night." But the man wasn't done. He stepped even closer, invading Steven's space, pointing at him. "What are you going to do about it?" he said. "Nothing. That's what I thought." The bar buzzed with anticipation. What that man didn't know, what no one in that bar realized yet, was that the quiet man he was trying to humiliate had spent his entire life mastering control, discipline, and violence. So he'd never have to prove it. And in just a few moments, everyone in that room was about to learn the difference between looking dangerous and being dangerous. The drunk man didn't walk away. If anything, Steven's calm response seemed to fuel him. He leaned against the bar, too close now, the smell of alcohol heavy on his breath. "You hear that, guys?" he said loudly, turning to his friends. "He doesn't want problems." The group burst into laughter. Steven kept his hands resting on the bar, fingers still, breathing slow. Years of discipline showed in the way he carried himself. No tension, no panic, just control. The bartender finally stepped in. "Hey man," he said to the drunk guy, trying to keep it light. "Let's keep it cool tonight, yeah?" The drunk waved him off. "Relax, I'm just talking." But talking wasn't all he was doing. He circled slightly, like a shark testing the water, eyes scanning Steven up and down. "You know," he said, "you've got that fake tough guy look. The silent type. Usually means you're hiding something." Steven turned his head just enough to acknowledge him. "I'm asking you politely," he said, voice low and even. "Leave me alone." That should have been the end of it. Instead, the man smirked. "Or what?" he challenged. "You gonna stare me to death?" A few people nearby shifted uncomfortably. One woman whispered to her friend, "This guy's pushing it." Another man subtly pulled out his phone, pretending to text while recording. Steven stayed seated. He didn't rise to the bait, didn't puff his chest, didn't threaten. That silence, measured, deliberate, made the drunk guy feel powerful. And when insecure people feel powerful, they often go too far. He reached out and tapped Steven's shoulder with 2 fingers. "I'm talking to you." The bar went quiet. Steven looked down at the hand on his shoulder, then back up at the man's face. His eyes weren't angry, but they were sharp now. Focused. "Don't touch me," he said. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. The drunk man scoffed and pulled his hand back, exaggerating the motion like he'd just touched something dirty. "Wow," he laughed. "Did I scare you?" A couple of people shook their heads. Someone muttered, "This isn't gonna end well." Steven placed some cash on the bar, signaling he was ready to leave. He stood up slowly, not aggressively, just enough to create space. For a split second, it looked like the situation might diffuse. But pride got in the way. "Running away already?" the drunk man said, stepping directly into Steven's path. "That's what I thought." The bartender raised his voice now. "That's enough. Back off." The drunk ignored him completely. "What's the matter?" he sneered. "Afraid someone's gonna find out you're nothing special?" Steven exhaled slowly through his nose. Not frustration control. The kind learned through decades of restraint. Around them, the bar had fully locked in. Conversations stopped. Glasses froze mid-air. Every instinct in the room said something was about to happen. Quick question, have you ever seen a situation like this in real life? Comment below and tell us which country and city you're watching this from. The drunk man took Steven's silence as victory. He laughed again, louder than before, soaking in the attention. What he didn't realize was that Steven wasn't backing down. He was measuring. And when a man like that measures a situation, it's never to show off. It's to decide how to end it with the least damage possible. The room held its breath, because the line between humiliation and regret was about to disappear. The drunk man took another step forward, close enough now that Steven could feel his breath. Alcohol, arrogance, and misplaced confidence mixed into something ugly. "Look at him," the man said loudly, turning to the crowd. "Won't even fight back. Just stares like he's in some movie." A few people laughed nervously. Others didn't laugh at all. The tension in the bar was no longer entertaining. It was uncomfortable. Steven remained still, not frozen, not afraid, just grounded. He had seen this type before. Men who needed an audience. Men who confused noise with power. Men who thought humiliation was the same thing as dominance. The drunk man knocked lightly on Steven's chest with the back of his fingers. "You even awake in there?" That did it. The bartender slammed his hand on the counter. "Hey, that's enough. Either sit down or get out." The drunk man spun around. "Mind your business," he snapped. "I'm just having fun." He turned back to Steven, eyes gleaming. "Right, tough guy?" Steven met his gaze. Calm, unblinking. "I've asked you to stop," Steven said. His voice was still even, but something underneath it had changed. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. The drunk man felt it too, though he didn't understand it. And instead of backing off, he doubled down. He grabbed Steven's glass and tipped it over. Liquid spilled across the bar, dripping onto the floor. The sharp sound of the glass hitting the counter echoed through the room. A collective gasp followed. "Oh wow," the man laughed. "My bad." The room went dead quiet. Steven looked at the spilled drink, then at the man, slowly, deliberately. Every instinct in the crowd screamed that this was the moment things would explode, but Steven didn't move. Instead, he reached for a napkin and calmly wiped his hand. That restraint, so quiet, so deliberate, unsettled the drunk man more than any threat could have. It made him feel small. And small men often respond the same way, with cruelty. "What?" the man sneered. "Gonna cry about it?" Steven stood up fully now. Not rushed, not tense, just tall. For a brief moment, the drunk man hesitated. Something in Steven's posture, his balance, his stillness, triggered a warning deep in his gut. He ignored it. "Sit down," the man said, placing a hand on Steven's chest again, firmer this time. "You don't belong here." The bar froze. You could hear the hum of the lights, the low bass of the music from the speakers. Someone's phone camera clicked as it started recording. Steven's eyes dropped to the hand on his chest, then back to the man's face. "Remove your hand," he said quietly. The drunk man laughed. "Or what?" Steven didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence itself was the answer. "Be honest, if you were standing there watching this, what would you do? Would you step in or stay back?" Comment "step in" or "stay back" below. The drunk man felt the crowd's attention fully on him now. Every eye, every phone. The pressure to perform to dominate pushed him further. He shoved Steven. Not hard. Not yet. Just enough to prove a point. Steven took one step back, not because he was hurt, but because he chose to. His feet adjusted naturally, instinctively finding balance. That single step changed everything. The shove didn't make him stumble. It made him ready. A man near the back muttered, "Oh no, that was a mistake." The bartender shouted, "That's it. I'm calling security." But it was already too late. The drunk man mistook Steven's controlled step as weakness. He puffed out his chest, emboldened by his own ignorance. "See?" he said loudly. "I told you nothing." He reached out again. This time, Steven caught his wrist. Not violently, Not dramatically, just firmly. The drunk man blinked, confused. He tried to pull his arm back and couldn't. For the first time, fear flickered across his face. "Hey, let go," he said, laughing nervously. Steven leaned in slightly, his voice low enough that only the man could hear. "This is where you stop." The grip tightened, not crushing, not cruel but absolute, controlled, final. The drunk man's laughter died. Around them, the crowd sensed it too. The shift, the moment where the joke ended and reality began. Steven wasn't showing off. He wasn't angry. He was ending something before it became worse. The man tried once more to pull away and failed. A sharp wince crossed his face. Okay, he muttered. "Relax." Steven released his wrist and took a step back, giving him space. That should have been the end, but humiliation burns hotter than wisdom. The drunk man, red-faced and embarrassed, lashed out with a shove fueled by pride and panic. And in that instant, less than a second, the room crossed a line it could never uncross, because Steven Seagal was done being patient. And everyone in that bar was about to learn why calm should never be mistaken for weakness. Time seemed to slow the moment the drunk man shoved him, not because the shove was powerful, but because Steven chose not to respond immediately. The bar held its breath. Steven's feet adjusted again, subtle and precise, like a compass needle settling north. His shoulders stayed relaxed. His hands hung loosely at his sides. To anyone who didn't know better, it looked like he was still deciding what to do. In reality, the decision had already been made. The drunk man took a step back, chest heaving, adrenaline pumping. "Yeah," he said loudly, forcing a laugh. "That's what I thought." But the laughter didn't come this time. The crowd wasn't entertained anymore. Faces that once showed curiosity now showed concern. Phones were no longer raised for fun. They were raised to document. Steven looked at the man steadily. "This doesn't need to continue," he said. His voice wasn't threatening. It wasn't angry. It was calm in a way that carried weight, like a door closing softly but permanently. The drunk man scoffed. "You hear this guy?" he said, looking around for validation. "He thinks he's in charge now." No one answered. That silence unsettled him more than any shout could have. Steven took one slow step forward, not into the man's space, but close enough to be heard clearly. The bar lights reflected off his eyes, steady and focused. "I've warned you," he said. "Walk away." The words landed differently this time. Something about the way he said them measured, final cut through the noise in the drunk man's head. For a split second, instinct whispered that this was not a man to toy with. The drunk man hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then pride took over. "What are you gonna do?" he snapped. "Put me to sleep with your mind?" A few people winced. The bartender moved closer, phone in hand now. "Sir," he said to the drunk man, "this is your last chance. Leave." The drunk man rounded on him. "Stay out of it." That was when Steven spoke again. "This ends now." 3 simple words. Not shouted, not rushed, but they carried the certainty of someone who had ended far worse situations without needing to explain himself. Steven raised his hands slightly, not clenched, not aggressive. Open palms, non-threatening, a posture that said control, not combat. The drunk man mistook it for surrender. He lunged. It happened fast, but not chaotically. Steven didn't swing. He didn't charge. He didn't lose his balance for even a moment. He stepped offline, redirecting the man's momentum with a smooth, efficient movement that looked almost effortless. There was no drama, no flair, just precision. The drunk man stumbled, suddenly off balance, shock flashing across his face as he realized he was no longer in control of his own body. Steven released him just as quickly. The man fell backward into a chair, knocking it over with a loud crash. The bar erupted not with cheers, but with gasps. "Whoa, did you see that? What just happened?" Steven stood exactly where he had been, breathing steady, expression unchanged. He hadn't chased the man, hadn't followed up, hadn't tried to win. He had made his point. The drunk man scrambled to his feet, panic now mixing with anger. "You think that was something?" he shouted, voice cracking. "You got lucky." Steven didn't respond immediately. He waited until the man stopped yelling, until the room quieted again. Then he spoke slow, clear, and calm. "I'm not here to fight you," Steven said. "I'm here to avoid hurting you." That sentence landed hard. A woman near the bar whispered, "Who is this guy?" Another man shook his head. That wasn't normal. The drunk man's bravado was fading fast. His breathing was uneven. His eyes darted around the room, suddenly aware of how alone he was. Still, humiliation pushed him forward. "You don't scare me," he said weakly, though his body said otherwise. Steven nodded once. "Good," he replied. "Then you'll leave." Silence followed. The bartender gestured toward the door. "You heard him." The drunk man looked at the exit, then back at Steven. His jaw tightened. You could see the internal battle, ego versus survival. For a long moment, it looked like he might actually walk away. Then someone laughed nervously behind him. That was all it took. The drunk man turned back, rage flaring again. He took a step forward, fists clenching, determination born not from courage but from shame. Steven's expression didn't change, but his stance did. Subtle, grounded, ready. The crowd sensed it instantly. Whatever had just happened before was nothing compared to what could happen next, because Steven Seagal had given every warning a man could give, and the next move wouldn't be a warning at all. The drunk man stepped forward again. This time, there was no laughter left in him, no audience-seeking grin, just clenched fists, flushed skin, and the brittle confidence of someone who had gone too far to turn back without losing face. "You don't get to tell me what to do," he said, voice tight. Steven didn't reply. He didn't need to. The room felt smaller now, like the walls had leaned in to watch. The music had stopped completely. Somewhere behind the bar, a glass rattled as someone's hand trembled. The drunk man threw a wild punch. It wasn't fast. It wasn't controlled. It was fueled by alcohol and humiliation. Telegraphed, sloppy, desperate. Steven moved, not forward, not back, just enough. He shifted his weight, stepped slightly to the side, and guided the man's arm past him with a motion so smooth it barely registered as a technique. To an untrained eye, it looked like the punch simply missed, but it didn't miss. It was redirected. In the same fluid motion, Steven placed a hand on the man's elbow and another near his wrist, turning momentum against itself. There was no strike, no slam, no brutality, just leverage. The drunk man gasped as his balance vanished. His knees buckled, not from pain but from confusion. One moment he was attacking, the next he was folded forward, forced down by his own force. A sharp breath escaped his mouth as he hit the floor, not hard, but hard enough to understand something had gone very wrong. The bar exploded with sound. "Oh my, did you see that? What just happened?" Steven released him immediately and took a step back. No follow-up, no pose, no victory. The drunk man lay there for a second, stunned, palms flat against the sticky floor, trying to process what had just occurred. His friends didn't rush in. No one did. Everyone was too shocked. He pushed himself up slowly. Face pale now? "That's enough," the bartender said firmly, already dialing his phone. "Sit down. Now." The drunk man looked up at Steven from the floor. For the first time all night, his eyes weren't filled with arrogance. They were filled with fear. You attacked me," he said weakly. Steven shook his head once. "You attacked yourself," he replied calmly. Those words cut deeper than anything physical could have. Security finally arrived, two men moving quickly through the stunned crowd. They helped the drunk man to his feet, keeping a careful grip on his arms. "Sir," one of them said, "you need to leave." The drunk man didn't argue. He couldn't. His confidence had completely drained away, replaced by a hollow silence. As he was guided toward the door, he turned his head once more toward Steven, not with anger, with disbelief. Steven met his gaze, expression neutral, not proud, not pleased, not cruel. Just finished? The door closed behind the man with a dull thud. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the bar erupted not in cheers, but in stunned murmurs. People talked over each other, replaying the moment in fragments. He didn't even hit him. That was insane control. Who is that guy? Steven returned to his seat, picked up his jacket, and placed some money on the bar to cover the spilled drink. His movements were unhurried, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The bartender stared at him. "You okay?" he asked. Steven nodded. "I'm fine." "You handled that differently," the bartender said carefully. Steven offered a small smile. "There's always a way to end things without making them worse." A few people nearby nodded, still processing what they'd witnessed. Phones buzzed as clips were replayed, messages sent, videos uploaded. Steven slipped on his jacket and turned toward the exit. As he walked past the tables, conversations quieted again. People looked at him with a new awareness now, not admiration exactly, but respect mixed with curiosity. Outside, the night air was cool and still. Steven stepped into it without looking back. Behind him, inside that bar, the story had already begun to change. What started as an attempt at humiliation had turned into a lesson, one that would be told and retold, growing sharper with every retelling. Because the most shocking part wasn't that Steven Seagal had won a fight. It was that he never actually fought at all, and the realization was just beginning to spread that the quiet man they had underestimated was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, precisely because he didn't need to prove it. The bar didn't return to normal after Steven walked out. It couldn't. People were still frozen in their seats, replaying the moment over and over in their minds, the way the drunk man had attacked with confidence, and the way that confidence had collapsed in seconds without a single punch being thrown. Someone finally broke the silence. Who was that guy? Another voice answered, uncertain. No idea. But that wasn't normal. The bartender leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. He'd seen fights before, plenty of them. Broken bottles, bloody noses, chaos. What he had just witnessed was something else entirely. One of the security guards pulled out his phone. You know, he said slowly, scrolling. I think I've seen him before. A woman nearby frowned. Seen him where? The guard turned the screen around. The name on the screen changed everything. Steven Seagal. A ripple went through the room. No way. You're kidding. That was him? Phones came out instantly, not to record now, but to confirm. Searches, photos, clips, faces began to match. The quiet man at the bar, the calm voice, the effortless control. It clicked. Oh my God, someone whispered. He's a martial artist. Not just that, another added. He's a legend. The realization spread fast, like electricity through the room. Conversations overlapped, voices rising in disbelief. That explains everything. Did you see how he moved? He warned the guy so many times. The bartender shook his head slowly, and he never once tried to show off. Outside, Steven walked down the sidewalk, unaware or unconcerned with the storm of recognition building behind him. The cool night air felt clean after the tension inside. His breathing was steady, his pulse calm. For him, the incident was already over. But for everyone else, it was just beginning. Inside the bar, one of the drunk man's friends sat in stunned silence, staring at the door Steven had exited through. We really messed up, he muttered. Another nodded. He could have hurt him bad. But he didn't, someone else said quietly. That's the crazy part. The bartender looked toward the door again. That wasn't weakness, he said. That was restraint. By the time the police arrived to take statements, routine, calm, no arrests needed, the story had already started traveling beyond the bar's walls. Videos were being uploaded. Group chats were lighting up. Someone had already titled a clip. Drunk guy tries to pick a fight with Steven Seagal, instantly regrets it. Oh. Outside, a few people from the bar spotted Steven further down the street and stopped at a distance, unsure whether to approach. One man finally called out, hesitant, "Hey, Steven." Steven turned, not sharply, not defensively, just calmly. "Yeah?" he replied. The man swallowed. Steven nodded once. "Take care," he said. That was it. No speech, no lesson delivered out loud, no reminder of who he was or what he could do. He continued walking, disappearing into the night. Back at the bar, the drunk man's absence was louder than his earlier presence. The chair he'd knocked over had been set upright again, but the energy hadn't settled. People spoke in quieter tones now, reflective. He tried to humiliate him, a woman said, and didn't even realize who he was dealing with. A man beside her replied, "That's the thing. Steven never made it about who he was." Someone else added, "He made it about stopping it before it got worse." What do you think is more powerful, raw aggression or total self-control? Comment control or aggression below. Later that night, as the bar finally resumed its noise, the story kept evolving. Details sharpened. The moment slowed down in retellings. The control became more impressive with every version, but the core truth stayed the same. A man tried to assert dominance through humiliation, and instead, he ran headfirst into discipline. Not violence, not rage, discipline. Steven Seagal never raised his voice, never threw a punch, never chased applause. He simply drew a line and enforced it with precision. By morning, The clip would be everywhere. People arguing in comment sections, some calling it luck, others calling it mastery, most calling it a lesson. But for the people who were there, who felt the air change, who watched confidence collapse into fear, they knew the truth. The most dangerous people aren't the loudest ones in the room. They're the ones who stay calm, even when they no longer need to. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. What started as a shaky phone recording inside a crowded bar had spread across social media at lightning speed. Millions of views, thousands of comments, headlines written by strangers who hadn't been there but felt like they were. Drunk man tries to humiliate Steven Seagal, instantly regrets it. Quiet man at bar shows what real control looks like. People replayed the moment again and again, not because it was violent, but because it wasn't. There were no flying punches, no dramatic beatdown, no rage-filled explosion, just a calm response that ended a dangerous situation before it spiraled out of control. And that's what fascinated people most. Comment sections filled up fast. He warned him so many times. That wasn't strength, that was discipline. The scariest part is how calm he stayed. Some argued, of course. A few claimed it was staged. Others said the drunk man deserved worse. But the overwhelming response focused on one thing: restraint. Inside the bar, the story had already taken on a life of its own. Regulars retold it to newcomers with widened eyes, each version more detailed than the last. "I swear," one man said. He barely moved. 10. "If we read her," another added. It was like the guy just fell apart on his own. The bartender, when asked about it later, kept his response simple. "I've seen real fights," he said. That wasn't one. That was someone choosing not to fight. As for the drunk man, he never returned to that bar. According to one of his friends, the embarrassment hit harder than the fall. The video followed him online. People recognized him. The joke stung. But beneath the humiliation was something else, an unspoken understanding of how badly things could have gone. He hadn't lost a fight. He'd been spared one. Steven Seagal, meanwhile, didn't give interviews. He didn't comment online. He didn't correct the headlines or add fuel to the story. When a reporter eventually asked him about it days later, his response was short. "Conflict is easy," he said. "Control is harder." That quote spread almost as fast as the video. People shared it under clips of the incident, under debates about strength, under arguments about ego and pride. It became a quiet counterpoint in a loud internet culture, obsessed with dominance. For those who watched closely, the real lesson wasn't about Steven Seagal at all. It was about how easily people mistake silence for weakness, how often calm is underestimated, how pride can turn a harmless moment into a dangerous one. The man in the bar thought humiliation was power. Steven showed that power doesn't need to humiliate. It just needs to end things. Weeks later, the story still surfaced in discussions about self-defense, discipline, and respect. Martial artists broke down the movement frame by frame. Psychologists pointed out how de-escalation saved everyone involved. Commentators argued about ego versus control. But for the people who had been there that night, the ones who felt the tension, heard the warnings, and saw the shift, they didn't need analysis. They had witnessed it firsthand. A man tried to assert dominance. Another man refused to feed it. And in that refusal, everything changed. Steven Seagal walked into that bar as a stranger. He walked out the same way. No applause, no recognition demanded. Just a quiet reminder that the most dangerous thing in the room is often the person who doesn't need to prove anything at all. If you believe real strength is shown through control, not chaos, type respect in the comments and subscribe for more true-style stories about discipline, humility, and quiet power. Because the loudest people make the most noise, but the calm ones decide how things end.